Hey everyone, thank you for staying with us through those minor technical difficulties. We're very glad to be here today with world famous musician Krishna Das and devotee of
World
Maharaji.
famous.
Yes, the New York Times called you the chant master of, what was it, the American chant master, great American chant master or something like that.
The New York
So
Times, I don't know if they know what they're talking. Who's that?
this
Hello.
is baby Sky. She wanted to say hi. Say
Hi,
hi to
baby
Krishna Das,
Sky.
baby. Yes.
Hi.
So I do see some comments saying Krishna Das KD is echoing, and that's true, but I think it's kind of appropriate. I feel like that
They
kind
say
of
I'm
works.
echoing. We don't know.
The volume down.
Hey, Giovanna,
The
you want to come?
volume's down, and maybe it's just because I'm always echoing.
I think if I push that mute, does that help?
How's that? Is that better?
I
Still
think
echoing?
it's better. I don't know. We can let the people tell us if it's working better. So the baby
Hi,
is trying to
Sky.
grab the computer, so
Yeah,
we're gonna
that's good.
have her go out of here in a minute. But I think Giovanna just wanted to say something to start out our interview.
Just
Okay.
hello. Hey,
Hi.
I'm Giovanna.
Nice
It's
to
so
meet you.
nice to meet you. And thank you so much for being here with us.
Hi, Sky.
Hey, hi. Yeah.
Okay, she's very rambunctious.
Babies are
But
babies.
yeah, your music has meant so much to me since I was very young, and it's been such a huge part of my life's journey. And on behalf of so many other people that I know and love, just thank you so much for sharing your music with us over the years.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh my
I think we have to get the baby out of here.
I'm too excited.
She's trying to grab the.
We'll see you later.
She's trying to knock over the computer, grab the
Say
phone.
bye.
Bye, baby. I love you. Okay. So Krishna Das, thank you once again for being here with us. This interview is going to be for our upcoming universe issue. So right now we have this sort of progression of issues where we had the health issue come out in spring. The current issue is the Earth issue. Then the next issue is the universe issue. And then the following issue is the love issue. So it's going from like the individual to the earth to the universe and then to love. And we're trying to have that kind of gradual progression from sort of ego to like connection with everything. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to be touching on topics of love and the universe in this conversation. And we're also going to be touching on the new film about KC Tiwari, the Samadhi of KC Tiwari, Brilliant Disguise. It's a beautiful documentary film from the Love Serve Remember Foundation. Giovanna and I watched the whole film yesterday, the preview that was sent out to media, and it was really powerful. We had to keep stopping the movie to discuss the stories that were coming up because there were so many really powerful stories about Maharaji and about KC. And I'm really glad to be able to talk to you about it now. So
okay, good.
Okay, so just everybody's good on the echo. We're all good. Okay, we're all good. So KD, do you want to lead us in like a little prayer or something to start this conversation?
Okay, very good. Be happy to do that.
Awesome.
Kuma Kalabana Pavak Gyanagan Jasuhradayaga Vasinram Sarachabadhar Atulita Maladham Emshalam Vedeham Dhanurjavan Krishna Jnani Nama Graganyam Sakala Guna Nidhanam Vanaranam Adhisham Raghupati Priya Bhaktam Atajatam Namam Pushpadi Kritavarnisham Mashaki Kritarakshasam Ramayana Mahamalaratnam Ande Nilatmajam Anjananandanam Viram Janaki Shokanashanam Kapisamakshananta Ande Lanka Bhayankaram Langa Sindhu Salilam Salilam Yashokavahi Janakatma Jaya Adatana Dadahalankam Amamitam Pranjaliranjanayam Manojavam Maruttatulya Vegam Jitendriyam Buddhimatam Varishtam Patatmajam Vanarayutamukham Shri Ramadutam Sharanam Prapadye Shri Ramadutam Sharanam Prapadye Shri Ramadutam Sharanam Prapadye Anjaneyam Matipatalam Kanchanad Kamaniya Vigraham Parijat Taramula Vasanam Bhavayami Pavamananandanam Yatra Yatra Raghunath Kirtanam Tatra Tatra Kritamastakhanjali Vashpavari Paripurna Lochana Martinamat Rakshasantakam Bolo Bajranga Bali Hanuman Ki Jai.
Thank you so much for that, Krishna Das. That was beautiful. And I feel much more grounded than I did before.
Even though your arms are falling off, I understand.
Oh yeah, well, I did switch arms in the middle of it, but it's good. It's a good exercise. I'm feeling it in my shoulders now. But yeah, I feel much more grounded. I definitely felt like some anxiety coming in here today. Yeah, I was just like, it's kind of scattered. Our AC broke this morning and we were like trying to fix it and trying to get everything.
Excuse me for a second. We're going to try to fix that echo. We think we know what it is.
Is it still echoing for everybody? Send a message on Instagram Live if it's still echoing for you.
We didn't use our iRig, and now we don't know what's going on. But let's just keep going.
Okay, is there still an echo on you guys' side? You guys are good? No, everybody's
Indian style.
Yeah, everybody's saying it's fine, so I think we're good.
Good, we're good.
Yes, so this film that Giovanna and I just watched yesterday. It's all about your old friend KC Tiwari. Maybe you would call him your Indian father. I think you called him something like that.
Yeah.
And it's a very powerful film because it really shows a person who was living a life that was deeply grounded in spirituality, and not just spirituality, but this really deep kind of samadhi that he would just go into kind of at random times. He would just go into this very deep state of samadhi. And personally, I find it very interesting because as someone who with a meditation practice, I'm interested to learn about how people are able to go into these deep states in different ways. So first, can you just tell us a little bit about why you guys made this film and who KC was to you?
Well, KC Tiwari, who I called Baba, was a long time devotee of Neem Karoli Baba, our guru. And his whole life was spent deeply involved with spiritual practice and spiritual realities, so-called spiritual, real life. And he, especially, we knew him before Maharaji left the body, but after Maharaji left the body, we got much closer to him, the Westerners. He would have us over for dinner, and he would talk and tell stories, and I became very close with the family, and they really saved my life, because after Maharaji disappeared, it was very hard for me. And they embraced me so deeply and let me into the family as I became the older brother of the kids and the oldest son, you know, and they were so kind and so loving. And all that love and kindness, well, came from the depth of their spiritual being. We made the film to share that with people, and to give, like you say, another version of another storyline about spirituality. And the one thing about Tiwari is that he was completely busy in the world. He was a teacher, he was a headmaster of a school, he raised a family, he took care of people. I mean, he wasn't sitting in a cave somewhere. And Maharaji, as far as we knew, at least not just the Westerners, but as far as all of the devotees that I've ever spoken to, it seemed that Maharaji really was almost totally concerned with householder devotees. And it was as if he spent his time helping people fulfill their desires so they could move on. He used to say, you can't talk to a hungry person about God. And he fed everyone, not just food, he fed everyone on every level all the time. And he didn't teach us, he didn't require any kind of renunciation in terms of, you know, wearing orange clothes and shaving your head and living in some ashram and, you know, that kind of stuff. He was very much into helping us live in the world in a good way, you know, and this, of course, is based on his status. That's not the right word, but his position, you know, who he is. He saw people's lives completely. He saw all their lives, their past lives and their future lives, and he knew what you needed in order to move on and finally merge with that, into that oneness. And so he did what had to be done to help us do that. And with Tiwari, you know, Tiwari had lost his parents when he was young. They died. Then the aunt who raised him died when he was very young. And he just decided he didn't want any part of family life. He was going to be a yogi. But at the same time, he needed to eat. So he became a school teacher. And, but then Maharaji got him married. He literally forced him to get married. You know, I mean, he forced them to agree to get married. Let's put it that way. He didn't force anything on anyone, but it's a great story, and I think it's told in the movie pretty deeply. But he finally got Tiwari to agree to give up his celibacy and to enter into the world in a way. And you know, Tiwari said to me one day, he said, "My boy, you know, I didn't have samadhi for the first time until after I was married." And he had this look on his face. It was too great, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I personally, I struggled with the decision of whether I should stay like at the monastery where I was at in Thailand, or kind of go into the world and be a householder. And I always felt like it would be deeper to just stay in a monastery and connect with the universe all the time. But I ended up deciding to go the householder path um, because I felt like, besides, you know, being like that sort of force to bring spirituality into the world, like going into the world to bring it into the world,
Yeah.
I also just felt like I wanted to have a family, you know what I mean? And that was like a deep and spiritual part of life itself, you know what I mean? And
You did what you wanted to do.
yeah, yeah,
And that's actually what we need to do, because if we don't, and Tiwari was fully on this, fully with this, if we don't follow our hearts and if we don't feed our hungers, we'll always be hungry and we'll never be able to meditate, because there's always that, you know, I really want to do this. And even if it's unconscious, it affects your mind. So
yeah, that's true.
we have our karmas and we can't escape them. There's no escaping our karmas. But we don't necessarily know what they are until we look back, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
So how does
when,
a being like Maharaji um, get past all of that to the point where he doesn't have that draw of any of the worldly things, and he could live that life, um, you know, the non-householder life, the deep, the only spiritual life, if you would call it that.
that's an interesting question. These great beings have already done everything. They're not. And sudden enlightenment takes millions of lifetimes to happen, and one completes one's karmas, whatever that is. You know, Maharaji was married and had a family. He had 3 children. He had left home around 8, when he was 8, because his stepmother, his mother died. His stepmother didn't feed him and wanted her son to take over to inherit the land. So she basically was nasty to him, and he just split. He went to the jungle.
Wow.
And many years later, his father found him and brought him home. And he had been engaged, betrothed when he was 8 years old. You know, kids they sign a, you know, they get engaged. They don't live together until much later, but when they're young, in the villages in India in those days, 100 years ago. So he had been engaged, and then he left for the jungle. And when he came back, he married the girl, and they had a family.
Wow.
But so that was the karma of that situation. Whether he was at all identified with any of those actions is really the question, and I would have to say that he was not. That he had no he had no desires to satisfy anymore. It's done. A great being like this is done. They may act in the world in a certain way, and from our point of view, it may look like they want something,
Hmm.
but not the really great beings are free of that,
Hmm.
And the
Yeah.
question but you actually asked, how does that happen? Well, that's a great question. And even if I did know the answer, would I be able to do it? I don't know. I'm doing the best I can. And that's, I think, the answer to your question.
Hmm.
Each one of us has to listen to our hearts and do the best we can. And if we have, well, in Tiwari's case, he was a very close disciple of a very great being. And that being helped him overcome some of his own tightness of his mind. For instance, he had taken his vow of celibacy, of brahmacharya, and he was not going to be in the world. And Maharaji knew that that wasn't really in his own best interests. So he coerced him out of it in a very beautiful way, so to speak.
Yeah.
But only a great being like can really do that without any agenda of their own, which
Yeah.
is the key to it all.
Hmm. I wanted to ask you about a clip from the beginning of the film, the Samadhi of KC Tiwari. There was actually a clip of Ram Dass talking, and he's a very powerful speaker. And he talked about going into states of meditation where we are beyond space, beyond time, we are infinity. We are in infinity, we are in eternal time. And to me, that's a beautiful expression of kind of connecting with the universe and being really just one with everything, being completely present. And it fascinates me to, because for most people, I think for most meditators, maybe they can be in that state sometimes, but most of the time they're in normal, like everyday consciousness. And what fascinates me is when there are people that can live most or all of their lives in that state. So would you say that that state is what Maharaji was in was it all the time or most of the time? Was KC in that
Yeah.
most of the time or sometimes?
As far as Maharaj is concerned, of course, yes, he's in that. There's a total merging with the universe. There's no individual agenda anymore. There's no me anymore in Maharaji. Tiwari was not on that level. He still had his egoistic tendencies, but he was a great yogi, and even while being busy in the world with responsibilities, that he was able to maintain a very deep practice. Now, when you read something like that from Ram Dass, you have to recognize, first of all, when did Ram Dass say that?
I think it was in the
Ram Dass went through many changes in his life.
Mm.
He ripened beautifully over the years, and especially after the stroke, his way of seeing his life changed greatly. A lot of the earlier things he said, a lot of that was based on his LSD experiences. Now, one of the problems with the biggest problem with meditation is our expectations. When you read something like that, if you don't give it the right context, that puts something in people's minds that this is what they have to do, this is what they need to experience, and if they're not experiencing that, they're not doing it right. And it totally fucks up their day and their practice and their lives. There's nothing more destructive to peace of mind than that kind of thinking. You be where you are, you extend some kindness to yourself, you help yourself calm your mind and become a good human being. That's where you start, and that's where you finish. Any experience you have comes and goes, nothing lasts. And when Ram Dass described that kind of experience, he's describing a particularly intense, 99% sure LSD experience, which is a drug-induced, well, a chemical-induced vision, which Maharaji said, LSD brings you into the room with Christ, but you can't stay. So how many times do you want to get thrown out of that room? But the problem with that is the expectation we have. When we have those kind of visionary experiences, even without chemicals, we have to recognize that every experience is going to change. Nothing is going to last except our own true nature, which is pure being, pure awareness, pure love. So we have to overcome those kind of self-judgment expectations.
Yeah, that's very well said. Thank you. You actually just brought up a point that I wanted to ask you about also. You mentioned, everything is going to change, right? So it's the Buddhists have this concept of anicca, right? That everything is always changing. And, and I think that sort of concept is spread throughout most of Eastern wisdom and mysticism and spirituality, that everything is always changing. So
even on a cellular molecular level, there's always movement. Nothing is solid, nothing is still. It's always just, it's always in change and flux.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
We're too gross. Our attention, our awareness is way too gross to see that.
Right. So this concept that, and the truth, I would call it, that everything is constantly changing. So how is it possible that anyone, like Maharaji, for example, could be always in a certain state, in a state of
You see, when we can't help but project our own egos, our own version, our own version of reality on things. There is no Maharaji. He is the universe. There's not someone doing it or being it. That would be ego. There's no one having those states of consciousness. He is those. There is no he. All there is the universe, and it's coming through what was once that being, what once looked like that being. There's nobody doing anything. But we can't conceive of that because everything we conceive comes out of our own delusion that we are real, that we are who we think we are. Isn't that crazy? If we didn't think we are who we think we are, we wouldn't be thinking we're anything, and we would be the whole universe. But we think we are who we think we are, and that's the end of the story.
Wow. So then I know this may be impossible to answer, but if there was no one experiencing those states and Maharaji is the universe, or was the universe, or is the universe, then what happened to the person that was Maharaji? Did he, that was Neem Karoli Baba? What happened to that?
Let me ask you a question. Can you find your ego? What is it? Can you find it? Is it a thing you can find?
I guess not.
No, it's thoughts. When those thoughts no longer, at first those thoughts happen because of karma, and then you're not identified with those thoughts anymore, you're not thinking them, and then eventually there's no more thoughts coming. But we are, they say, we are the space in which all those things exist. There is no Maharaji thinking he is something. All there is awareness, pure being. Love has no object. Love is the subject. It's everything. There's no one loving in real love. So what we experience from a being or with a being like Maharaji is unconditional love, because there's no one there to have conditions. There's no one judging, this one's good, I love him more, or I love her less, and this and that. There's just a flow. The sun is a good example of unconditional love. It shines on every motherfucker in the universe. It shines on the worst people and the best people equally. It doesn't say, well, maybe I shouldn't shine so much on that guy. You know, he's a miserable guy. No, it shines. That's love. That's real love. And that's Maharaji. That's what we call Maharaji. We call that thing up in the sky sun. You know, that's a nice name, but the sun. It's a concept. It's a label on something. It's a function, and it's always changing.
Mm.
It's burning, and it's burning fuel, and that's also changing. It's not a thing that's always going to be there.
Mm.
The so-called ego, you know, is just what we think we are. And if we didn't think it, but you can't stop it either, you see. That's why practice is so important, and training to let go again and again of what we're glued to karmically. We just, little by little, we move more deeply into ourselves. So when the thought comes through the awareness, we don't necessarily think it.
Mm.
But most of us do all the time. We never question our thoughts. We believe everything we think. That's real insanity.
Mm. Yeah, I like that distinction between, you know, the thoughts coming through and actually thinking them like actively. Would you, I know that nobody can see inside another person's consciousness, but I think a lot of people that were around Maharaji got a really interesting sense of him. And do you feel like he had thoughts that passed through that he just didn't think them, you know, that he didn't engage with them in that way that we might normally do? Or do you think he just didn't have any thoughts coming through and he was just pure love all the time? Like in a flow of just presence and experience.
Once again, you say those things as if they're two different things.
Hmm.
Maybe, maybe not.
Hmm.
He is love. Are there thoughts in love? Maybe. Did he identify with thinking them? I doubt it, because he wasn't. There was, like I said, our understanding of him is that there was no one loving. There was only love. And that love responded naturally to the karmic situation of everyone and everything around it. There was no agenda, okay, I'm going to shine a little bit more over there. No, I don't think that happened. I don't think that was happening. But
you know, the concept that you're talking about now is actually another question that I had for you, or well, a beautiful quote that I wanted to read from your Instagram post or Facebook post from a while ago. You were talking about KC Tiwari. So you said, once I was very much in love with a woman. I was telling my Indian father, Mr. Tiwari, about it, and he was listening very patiently. When I finished, he said, my boy, relationships are business. Do your business, enjoy your business, but love is what lasts 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Real love is who we are. It's not between people. It's not affection. It's not caring, not attachment. It's actually who we are. It's our true nature. And it's a really beautiful quote. And when I hear that, it really resonates with me. Do you feel that even when we don't realize it, that our true nature is still love, even if we're not embodying that? Or is it something that we need to cultivate to be love?
all we need to do is clean the mirror of our hearts. You know, everything we see out there, we're looking into a mirror, and we're seeing our version of stuff. And our version of stuff is based on our own attachments and aversions, likes, dislikes, wants, blah, 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 blah. So as we free ourselves of those, that conditioning, what we see changes. How we see the world changes. It's really important to, you know, when I had that conversation with Baba, he said, do your business, enjoy. You know, there was no judgment about the business. It was just a recognition of that relationships, he was pointing out to me, are based on more than one person relating with another person, or 10 people, or 100 people. And each one of those people thinks they are who they think they are, and they're relating based on that. The true nature is always the same in every being all the time. It doesn't need to be cultivated. What needs to be cultivated is awareness of it.
Hmm.
And
So,
you can't, that's not an ego, that's not a willful, once again, you're not making yourself aware, you're recognizing awareness. It's very subtle. So that's why we start with, that's why we ask to start with just calming the mind down. And all these thoughts, it's just idiocy. It makes no difference to all this shit that we think. All we need to do is calm our asses down. All the answers will come from inside. But you have a magazine to write, so I understand the questions.
thank you. No, your answers are beautiful, and it's really more about the. I mean, the questions and the answers. It's just all a flow. It's a beautiful thing. So I actually wanted to ask you about samadhi, because that's really the topic of, well, one of the themes of the movie, with KC Tiwari's samadhi, that he would go into samadhi at, spontaneously. So
Well,
you're
yeah,
talking a lot
yeah.
about a sort of like a flow where you kind of, you don't have to do anything actively. And I know that there's some meditative traditions that, there's a technique and you kind of go into samadhi over a long period of time. I think maybe there's different like ways of looking at samadhi. So I kind of wanted to get an understanding of what can you describe this, like what is it like internally in this type of samadhi? Like what would that feel like for someone? Is there no thoughts? Is it a state of no thoughts? Or is this, like, can you like elaborate on what that might be like?
How the fuck would I know? You know, I'm not him. I have no idea what he's experiencing. But it wasn't random, and it wasn't, he trained fiercely for many, many, many years. When I was living with him in India, we'd sleep in the same bed at night, and Mr. Tiwari would sleep with the kids. Baba would get up at 3 in the morning, go pee, come back and sit down, boom, gone for like 4 or 5 hours until the house woke up and tea is served. I would wake up, look at him, turn over and go back to sleep. Not once in 25, 30 years did he ever say to me, don't you think you should meditate? He let me be who I am, which I could kill him for that. Why the fuck didn't he push me a little bit? But he knew that you can't be pushed. It has to come naturally. And what was natural for him was practice from the day, he was born. He was doing very fierce practices early in life, to keep that energy moving in the right direction. And so when we're walking down the street with him, and he just like goes stiff and just sits there, like stands like this at the corner. It's not a random thing. It's because he's been cultivating concentration of mind and whatever else for so many years. There's no way we could understand what his experience is until we have it.
Yeah. So just clarify my question a little bit. I spent some time in this monastery in the Theravada Buddhist tradition in Thailand, and the way that they were teaching an Anapanasati style of meditation, sort of watching the breath that was based on the Anapanasati Sutta, and they had this idea that, I mean, the way that they structured their meditation and they looked at it was that you keep meditating over a long period of time, and as you continue to sort of let go of thoughts and stop engaging with them and like let the mind settle down and quiet down, that the mind goes from being like a broken stream of like, if you're pouring water and there's sort of like a broken stream of water, it goes to like an unbroken stream. So like you could call it like flow, but just an unbroken stream. And they called it that, or they described it that way. And in that monastery, I did like a 10-day meditation, silent meditation, and there were I saw a lot of people that were meditating there, And over the 10 days, you know, we kind of went more and more silent, especially toward the end, in the mind. Some people did, some people didn't. And it came to a point where there is that kind of unbroken flow of consciousness, at least for some periods of time. So is the samadhi that KC went into, is it something like that you know a person could access through long periods of meditation, where you're kind of going into this sort of unbroken flow of consciousness, or is it something beyond that?
I asked Siddhima once. Siddhima is Maharaji's other great disciple. I said, Ma, should I meditate or should I chant? Meditate, you know, formal meditation. And she said, well, what do you like to do? Hello?
Mm-hmm.
She said that in 40 years with Maharaji, not once did he ask her to meditate in a formal sense. He asked her to do japa, which is the repetition of the name, which is similar to chanting, but quietly in this case, and to serve others. And he said that the more subtle states of consciousness cannot be brought about by the use of the personal will. And he said those states of consciousness will arise as the heart is purified and cleaned of its selfishness. I added that. What he said was that those states will arise when you're ready. So I've taken a lot of Buddhist teaching over the years, Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, and my guru is theoretically from the Hindu tradition, although no one really knows much about him, really. So there you were watching your breath, and now here you are with the magazine, married, and a kid. What happened? What happened is your karma is manifested. That's all. So not everybody, those manuals are, I believe, totally accurate. They're absolutely correct. You do this, you do that, this is going to happen. However, our karmas don't often allow us to actually do that in that way at this time. Most of us born in this time are very busy in the world. Our minds are very distracted. We have lots of desires. We're hungry for this, hungry for that. We'd like to think we were more spiritual or higher beings, but we can't, we can't stop streaming, television shows nonstop. So your question, yes, those teachings are absolutely 100% correct. But there you were, and now here you are. And same with me. I was in India, and I was going there. I was never coming back to America. But I was really stubborn. And Maharaji allowed me to stay. In fact, he kept me there. He got my visa extended when I was going to be sent home. He kept me there for 2.5 years, and then he sent me home. I didn't want to go home, but he knew what was best for me. He said, you have to go, you have attachment there. And I thought, attachment? I gave everything away. I sold my car, my guitar, I gave my jeans away. What attachment do I have? Well, now 50 years later, I know. Everything that's happened to me, every thought I've had, everything I've done in the last 50 years is what he was talking about. This was stuff that had to come out. It could not be overcome. It couldn't be pushed aside so I could become enlightened. Nothing like that exists. It's a fantasy. We are who we are, and we need to be aware. We need to cultivate kindness and compassion in our lives as we are right now, and stop thinking about we should be somewhere else. And you know, like I said, you were watching your breath, and now you're watching your kid. And
Yeah.
that's perfect. Why not? Of course. And you can still be aware and cultivate awareness and kindness and compassion and peace of mind in these difficult circumstances. And that's when it really counts, because that's when it's really hard to do. So we're so aggressively goal-oriented in the Western culture. It's almost impossible to get around it. Everything we think is goal-oriented. We're always locating ourselves. How are we doing now? How are we doing now? And we do that with so-called spiritual things too, just the same as we do it in our daily lives. And we never notice it because it's so innate for us. Judgmental mind, you know, evaluation. How am I now? How am I now? This is really the only problem that we have. If we weren't doing that to ourselves, we would not only be happy, but we'd be able to help other people as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your beautiful words of wisdom today.
You pushed the right buttons, you know.
Yeah. I have so many more buttons to push, but I think that we are out of time at this point.
Why are we out of time? I'm
Oh,
here. I'm not going anywhere. What are you doing? You busy? Oh, the kid. You can't meditate. You have to go watch the kid. I got it.
Publicist that told me that we needed to wrap it up. But hey, if you have time for one more quote, this is not a quote, this is a paraphrase, but I was watching the film and KC had mentioned that Maharaji's teachings were really the yoga of love.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that was sort of what it was all about. And you kind of were just talking about that. And I feel like our next two issues, the universe issue and the love issue, to me, they're kind of related. Like you could kind of say like love is the universe, like Sat Chidananda, like everything is love. But I guess, do you see like spirituality, if you're advising somebody who's new to spirituality, would you say that it's better to go in on like a path of love and sort of cultivating that, or to kind of go into like what Ram Dass had been talking about back in that clip of being, in infinity and eternity in the universe? Do you think that different people, can relate to spirituality better from in one way or another? Like some people will relate better the universe way and some people will relate better than in the love way? Or do you think that it's just better to start with love all the time?
I think, since you asked me, that everyone has to find their own path. No one can tell you what to do. And if someone does tell you what to do and you agree, then you're listening to yourself, not to them. And if someone tells you what to do and you don't agree, you're listening to yourself, not to them. We all have to listen. The whole path, as far as I'm concerned, is learning to listen to your heart, your own intuition about yourself and your life. And then you make your own mistakes and you learn from them. And Tiwari was so kind and so supportive and so loving. Last night on my program, somebody asked about his wife. This is a picture of him and Mrs. Tiwari. I don't know. It's got that reflection.
Yeah.
They're two light bulbs, And this film really shows a lot about the spiritual path and what's possible. But once again, those samadhi experiences that Tiwari had were natural to him. He lived a certain type of life. It wasn't like he was going after that. Like it wasn't like, I want samadhi, I'm gonna get samadhi. No, it wasn't like that. Those experiences came out of love. It came out of his love for Maharaji, his love that he experienced in meditation and in his japa and practice. They were merging and opening in love. It wasn't a race or a competition, or it wasn't him trying to get anywhere. They were natural. It was a beautiful thing. And yeah, so the film is really, it really gives a little glimpse into what it was like to really hang out with people who really knew something. And which is rare these days. But I hope people enjoy it, that's for sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope people enjoyed it as well. I know Giovanna and I really enjoyed it yesterday when we watched it over the course of several hours, pausing it. That's the best way to me, is like if you can discuss the stories as you're going along, then that's great. But is it going to be released in theaters, or is it just going to be?
Yeah, I think it's going to have a theatrical release, but I imagine mostly it'll be on video soon.
Yeah, because the stories are so amazing, and they just beg discussion, like sort of miraculous things that happened around Maharaji, and
24/7.
mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for being here today to discuss the film, to discuss KC Tiwari and the universe and love. And I personally have been a fan of your music for a long time. I feel honored and grateful to be able to have this moment with you, even if I have to hold up this phone like this for the have all these.
That's the price you have to pay, the tapasya to get it. That's good.
It is. That's the price,
Very
but
good.
it's worth it. Very much worth it. So
nice to meet you too.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Be well.
Be well. Have a beautiful day.
Yeah, good.
Okay, I ended the live video, and I think I can end the stream here too.
Wait, I think my Facebook's still live here. Let me try to close it.